What's going on as far as housing goes in the entire state of Alaska? Are we seeing a collapse in the horizon? Are we seeing really any sign of things slowing down? Are we expecting more of the same? My name is Jamin Goecker. I'm a realtor in South Central Alaska with Keller Realty, and I'm here today to kind of answer that question for you because my mission is to help you to build an intentional and significant legacy for yourself and your family by coaching you in real estate. And today we're going to be talking about what's going on across the board in the entire state of Alaska as far as the residential properties go. We'll be looking at Anchorage, the MatSu Valley, Kenai Peninsula, and Fairbanks. Before we get started though, do give this video a like, do subscribe if you haven't done so already, and let's go and jump into today's market update. And I'll go ahead and give you a summary at the very end for what it is we're seeing on the ground. Now, the first market we're going to start with is Anchorage. And in Anchorage, what we're seeing is that there were about 340 properties that were available on the market this time last year. Now it's about 275. So we're seeing a little bit of a dip and just year over year on the number of properties that are available. The second thing we're seeing in Anchorage is the number of properties that actually sold actually took a dip as well from about 312 down to about 258 properties that sold during the last month. So that's pretty significant, and we'll talk about why that is in the summary. The next thing we see is the average sold price went from about $424,000 this time last year to about $449,000 year to date during the current time. So what that mean? Well, you know what? I go into more details about that, but let's go and save that for the summary. Let's switch gears real quick and take a look at what's going on in the MatSu Valley. So the MatSu Valley, we had roughly about 270 properties that were available on the market this time last year. Now you're seeing roughly about 370 properties are available on the market now in the MatSu Valley. So unlike Anchorage, we're actually seeing an increase year over date for the number of properties that are available on the market. The next thing we're seeing for the MatSu Valley is the number of properties that actually sold went down just a little bit. There was roughly 200 properties that sold this time last year. Now we're seeing there's about 185. So despite the inventory going up a little bit over there, we are seeing that the number of overall properties that have sold is starting to go down a little bit in the MatSu Valley. Not by much, but a little bit. The next thing we're seeing is that the average sold price in the MatSu Valley took a pretty sizable increase from about $348,000 to about $382,000 year to date, which means there's approximately, rough estimate, probably around a 10% increase year over date. So pretty significant, not as significant as it was the year before, where we're seeing about a 15% year over date increase. Let's take a break here real quick. For those of you who've been watching for a while, you do know that I host a podcast called the Alaskan Journey Podcast, where I talk with people who have actually made the move up here and are actually experiencing what it's like living up here and can kind of share their experiences of what it was like coming up here and then living up here. So if you're considering doing that, do make sure you check those in the description section down below to go ahead and see what that's all about. And make sure you take advantage of that so it's not just me talking to you, it's other people sharing their experiences as well. Now, the next market we're going to take a look at is the Kenai Peninsula. And the Kenai Peninsula is an interesting market for a number of reasons. But really the big takeaway, first off, is that the number of properties available on the market was about 204 this time last year, and now it's about 170. So kind of a familiar pattern across the board, less inventory this year than what we saw the year before. The next thing we're seeing is that the number of properties that actually sold in the Kenai Peninsula did actually increase. It went from about 81 to 94 the next year. So that is an indication that there is a lot of demand for properties over in the Kenai Peninsula. Last but not least, the average sold price in the Kenai Peninsula increased from about $311,000 this time last year to about $329,000 this year to date. So that's definitely an increase for what we're seeing for the year to date. Not as aggressive as what we saw in the previous couple of years though. Last but not least, let's go and take a look and see what's going on in Fairbanks. So Fairbanks is kind of an interesting market. It is super micro small compared to what we see in the other markets. So this time last year, there was about 32 properties available on the market. Now it's 33. So not a huge change there either way. Next thing we're seeing is that the number of properties that actually sold went from about 29 this time last year to 24 this year. So again, kind of a dip, not a whole big sample size to begin with though. Last but not least, we see the average sold price went from about $286,000 this time last year to about $326,000 this year. So if we're just looking at the percentages, that's pretty aggressive. That's approximately a 14% increase year over date. It's such a small sample size, though. It's totally what we would expect. Now, looking 1,000-foot view or 30,000-foot view across the board for what we're seeing on the residential side, with the exception of the MatSu Valley, we're seeing that there is less inventory across the board for what we normally have this time of year in all the markets. The MatSu Valley is the exception, and I expect that's probably because they have a lot of new construction that's starting to come online and to kind of bolster the amount of inventory. Keep in mind, everybody across the board is about a third or quarter of the inventory of what they usually have pre-pandemic. As far as the average sold prices, those are going to continue going up probably. I'm not expecting to see a big shift in the market anytime in the near future. And when I say shift, I mean everything kind of gets flipped over on its head and we have a completely different market dynamic. Right now, we have supply and demand. That's the basic of economics. And the supply is not going to be changed anytime soon because it's so difficult to build. We see things kind of shifting a little bit, maybe in the MatSu Valley. I'm not really seeing this huge market shift that some folks have been talking about. I am expecting we're going to start seeing a deceleration of the rate at which things are appreciating, whereas before the same house might have gotten like 10 offers, now it might only get like 5 or something like that. So interest rates are not, it's not a factor, for sure, but the demand is still going to be pretty high because the average age of somebody buying a property is 32, which just means that the millennial generation have decided that they're ready to buy houses. So that demand is going to remain pretty high going into the future. And, interest rates might dampen that a little bit, might make it a little less competitive in some situations, but realistically, we're not seeing this huge shift in the market. So what I can say right now, the interest rates we have right now are the cheapest you're going to see in 2022. So, if you're like me, you're trying to jump in and take advantage as quickly as you can. I sure hope this was useful. If it has, give this video a like. Do post any questions you have in the comments section down below. And if you'd like to reach out to me, do so either through Facebook, Instagram. If you want like a for sure fire way to get through to me, do reach out to me on my website. The link for that is going to be in the description section down below. So thank you, and we'll see you next time.